could steal 30 or 40 bases if he wanted to. I think if Mookie Betts wanted to steal 80 bases, he could. But they both know that the way baseball's constructed, it's just not worth it to go through. I mean, Trout's almost completely negated it from his game, and Mookie just runs in specialized circumstances now where, again, his stolen base total could be double or triple what it is, but he knows, and the Dodgers know, that the way runs are scored in baseball, generally it isn't about just getting from first base to second base. I mean, there's times you'll do it, but it's just infrequent now. Much like the save situation, I find the scarcity of stolen bases to actually be in. Some people might say, "Oh, aren't you tense? It's so hard to get stolen bases. We just lost Mondesi for maybe a month. People are going to be panicky about stolen bases." Remember, that means we need fewer to be competitive in the category, and it's easier to fix a team that's broken in stolen bases than it might have been in the past, because there's just not the pool. You can get more impact if you get one guy who happens to run a little bit, or if you just collect a bunch of guys who are going to steal anywhere from like 7 to 12 bases. That will help you. I actually find that reassuring, and I find it's less stressful to deal with saves and stolen bases. Some people say, "Oh, closers I hate closers. Let's get holds in the league, or you make it 4x4 or 5x4. I just don't want to deal with saves anymore." I actually find it less stressful to be chasing saves or evaluating ninth inning, eighth inning than it used to be, because I don't feel like I have to be right anywhere near as often as I did in the past to be competitive in that area.
Well, Scott, I think you nailed it perfectly. Byron Buxton is a great comparison to Mondesi, because Buxton is only 2 years older than Mondesi. Mondesi is in his 25, 26-year season right now. Buxton is 2 years older than right now. If Buxton stayed healthy, then you would have probably the stolen base whiz that everyone thought he'd be when he came up. Mondesi, same thing. If he can't stay healthy, if he keeps getting these small injuries here, these misses time, he's going to turn into the Byron Buxton where he always has all this hype that he shows and flashes that he can steal these bases, but he never actually lives up to the hype. And it's going to turn out exactly what's happening to Buxton. Ariel, you mentioned that Buxton looks more like a power hitter now, and he's bulking up a little bit more, and he's showing more power. That's what Mondesi may turn out to be, because if Mondesi can increase his home run to fly ball rate just a little bit, he can hit 25 home runs. He can hit that much. So the comparison is great. It's just that they're at different stages of their career. It's that Mondesi is where Buxton was 2 years ago, and we saw what happened when Buxton got injured. If the same thing happens to Mondesi, he may be on the same path as Byron Buxton.
And you know who Buxton reminds me of? He reminds me of Carlos Gomez from a couple years ago.
Very similar.
Yeah, it's a great comp. Outstanding defensive player. Holes in his swing, is always going to strike out a lot. Gomez used to remind me of just a little bit. They had different body types. Although Gomez and Buxton have, I think, more similar body types. But I always thought Gomez had a little bit of Mike Cameron in his game, or a really good defensive player. Cameron was a stockier guy, had more natural power, could maybe in a good season hit 30 home runs. I think people forget how good Carlos Gomez was at his peak. He was a guy who, and it took a while, it took a trade, right? It took some time for him to figure it out. And then when it went south for Gomez, I'm sure some fantasy managers got bitten because they're like, well, I know he's better than last season. I'm going to give him a pass. And I think maybe the fantasy industry held on to Gomez maybe an extra year longer with expectations. And then once he lost it, it felt like he couldn't play at all anymore. But I think Buxton and Gomez is an outstanding comp. And hopefully we'll see, because Buxton hasn't put it together yet and had the season that Gomez probably, I would guess, made an all-star team or two, or he would have at least been worth consideration when you throw in that defense. So I think that's a tremendous. I never really thought about that, but it's funny how I can just see Gomez in my mind's eye, and he really does have such a similar tool set, offense and defense, to Byron Buxton.
Yeah, and I think more of the progression, the career of being the big stolen base guy, and then morphing into the guy who has some speed but hits for power. So I see that as the big comp for me. All right, I want to get into our bold predictions here. It's all about having fun, and this way we can predict 162 games. When we did bold predictions last year, maybe we're doing just a quick 60-game season. But let's throw it out there, and maybe let's go around the room here. Let's get a bold hitter prediction and a bold pitcher prediction from everyone. All right, let's start with you, Scott. What's a bold hitter prediction for 2021?
Maybe it's easy to say this because he was active in the first game, but this is one of my most rostered players. Somebody who I got outside the 20th round in a lot of leagues, and I bet he's available in a lot of mixed leagues. I think Robbie Grossman is going to flirt with like top 40, top 45 outfielder value, because he's going to be leadoff most of the time for the Tigers. I think he has double-digit power. I think he's another guy who wants to steal bases. Not that he's going to steal 30, but I think he wants to steal maybe 15, 16, 18 bases. And his on-base percentage really plays well in that leadoff spot. It's a shame to see the A's give up. They gave up Grossman because I think they just decided they didn't want to pay him now that he had emerged a little bit and become more expensive of a piece, because he seems like a quintessential Tampa Bay or Oakland player. He's good at a lot of little things. He's not flashy, but he's a switch hitter. He just has a very wide, broad skill set, which I'm very attracted to those types of players. So I think Grossman is going to significantly outkick his ADP coverage, and if he's available right now in your mixed league, like a 12-team league, I think he's worth picking up right now.
I like that one. Ruven?
I actually have two bold. I mean, one is kind of not really bold, but two. First of all, for the Texas Rangers, I think they will have two hitters, one in the top three in the majors in homers, one in the top three in the majors in stolen bases. That's Joey Gallo and Leody Taveras. We've seen the Rangers run, so I think Taveras will get his chance to steal. He's got plenty of speed there. And Gallo in that new stadium, I think he's going to have a field day. But that's not that bold. My real bold prediction is Jock Peterson will lead the Cubs in home runs this year. With that swing and how well or not well both Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo have played the past couple of years, I think if Jock Peterson is able to play every day, he can lead the Cubs in home runs. And I don't have any shares of him anywhere. And if I see him anywhere, I'm going to take him because I saw him play today. He hit a ball out to left field. If the wind wasn't blowing in, it would have been a grand slam. His swing is just so perfect for Chicago, and I think he's going to work out very well there.
What do you give the probability of either Bryant or Rizzo being traded this year?
I can see Bryant a better chance because I don't know if Rizzo's in his last year of his contract, but Bryant is in the last year of his contract, and he was going to be traded. People, quote unquote, wanted him. There's so many rumors over the offseason that he was going to come to the Mets, but you know what? I don't think people want that headache of having to maybe possibly trade someone for him and then lose him in the offseason because they may not want to sign him to a long-term deal because also of his history of injuries.
Yeah, I think it's 50%. What about you, Scott? You think one of them will be traded?
I think they're certainly going to be sellers. I mean, it's a weird division because although nobody expects the Pirates to have any staying power, I think you can make a reasonable, plausible case for any of the other four teams in that division maybe winning. It's funny. I was so open to Chris Bryant off a down season a couple of years ago and then last year, and I think I just hit my breaking point, and the price got really good on Bryant, and we'll see if he has a good season. I'll regret it. I love that Peterson call, by the way. I haven't gotten too granular what the Cubs are going to do with him full time, if they're going to just live with what he does against left-handed pitching. But I think my friend Gene McCaffrey, who has published his own fantasy baseball work for a long time, and he's now doing his work at The Athletic, one of my just all-time favorite people in the industry, and somebody who's thinking, I think lines up a lot with me. Our process is very similar. He's always said that when players are platooned, and then if they get put into a full-time job, what happens very commonly, and he's studied this, he's got the data and the math to back it up, is what happens a lot of times with guys who platoon, and I realize part of this is survivor bias, because if you stink at anything, they're going to get rid of you anyway. But it's common where somebody may be a lefty, they platoon him, he doesn't play against left-handed pitching, then he finally goes somewhere where he plays all the time, and what happens is they hit righties better, because now they don't, maybe it's not their head isn't being messed with, or maybe their timing gets in a better groove, or whatever it is. I think Jock Peterson, if the Cubs would just say, look, you're our guy, we know you weren't a full-timer with the Dodgers, we need you in the lineup every day. If they would just leave him alone, even if he hit 210 against lefties or 195, I don't care. I think he's going to mash righties so much. I think he's a great call. I think the market gave you a very nice price on him. There's a ton of upside. I don't, like Ruben, I don't think I have a share of Peterson anywhere, but I wish I did. I think he was a really good value. And at the time you're drafting him, if he just does anything, if he just stays on the field and isn't a total bust, you'll probably get your investment back. And I think the rest of it is just room for upside. I think he's a great recommendation.
Where was this analysis a month ago, Ruven?
It was not yet available. That's why.
Listen,
it's a matter of seeing how they do in spring training, how they evolve during the course of that, and just seeing how comfortable they are with the team and how the team wants to actually play them. If Nomar Mazara, he couldn't find a place to play in when he was with the White Sox. They always kept taking him out. Same with the Rangers. They kept platooning him. You don't know what his full potential is unless he's able to play full time. Right. And he had, I think, 2 or 3 straight 20 home run seasons. just as a platoon, which is just crazy to think about. What if he played a full season? What would happen then?
Yeah, no, it's a really great call. I'm going to go with Franmil Reyes. I will predict that Franmil Reyes will out-earn Yohan Moncada, even though their ADPs are about 5 to 6 rounds apart. I think Franmil Reyes is Adam Dunn, but in a good Adam Dunn year. Like Adam Dunn would have those years where he would hit about 35, 40 homers, and he would have 210 average, and then some years he would have like a 260 average. I think Franmil Reyes is the good year Adam Dunn every year. I think he's about a 4th-round player that you're getting way, way down in the 10th, 11th rounds of drafts.
And by the way, doesn't he correlate nice with Gallo? Because there's a lot of, I'm not going to say they're the same type of hitter, but they have a lot of similarities where Gallo, more valuable in OBP leagues. And even when somebody has batting average risk, remember, it's always a range of outcomes with that average. Is wide error bars on that. Even somebody whose true batting skill you might think is like 230, 235, there's no reason why Joey Gallo might not hit 268 one year.
Yeah, and I think there is no batting average risk with Gallo, because I think that the price that you're paying for him already incorporates him hitting 210. Like there's no downside from where he's being projected. He's not being projected for 230, and you say, well, he could be 250 or 210. He's being projected at 210. So there is no risk for Gallo.
I don't have a lot of contacts inside baseball. I used to be a beat writer for the Pawtucket Red Sox, and I knew a few people. I knew some writers. I knew some. I could have some Rolodex numbers and claim to have inside information. Those days are over. But I do know somebody within baseball. I'm not going to say his name, but it would be somebody everybody would recognize who's now working for a team, who every once in a while will just whisper something to me. And he begged me last year to draft Gallo. And of course, Gallo got hurt and he had like a messed up season. Or maybe it was 2 years ago. But he was saying how he'd become a much more complete hitter, and he could hit the ball out to any part of the park. And he was on the verge. It was basically the storm clouds were assembling, and there was going to be an avalanche of rain. I mean, he was just going to have a monster season. And I still think there's going to be 1 year we're all going to look back and be like, man, I wish I had Joey Gallo this year. Or, oh yeah, of course I didn't win my league. I didn't get Gallo. I feel like there's that year is coming. And I don't know that I have him anywhere. I don't think I do. So I'll have to play him in DFS or get invested some other way if it tends to happen. But I think he's a great speculation play for where he went.
For sure. And just the side point, since we're talking about Gallo, according to the ATC volatility metrics, he has a very low variance and a negative skew, which means that projections are pretty close to each other, and yet there's one projection outside that's downward, meaning most projections are even higher than the ATC average. Very few people have that combination of really excellent both skew and standard deviation, and he does. Pete Alonso, by the way, has it also. A nice pick. But Franmil Reyes really is the guy, and I'm down on Yohan Moncada. I mean, he had that one really good year where he had 315 batting average, which, by the way, was all BABIP aided. It was 406 BABIP is historically high. He's never hit more than 231 in any year, Moncada. He has got a 31% strikeout rate. Didn't even attempt a base last year. Franmil Reyes has more stolen base attempts in spring training than Yohan Moncada this year. I can't see how those two were picked 75 to 80 picks away from each other. I think Franmil Reyes is a very undervalued player. He's going to be returned 4th-round value.
I will say one thing about Moncada, and this takes nothing away from all of your salient points about Reyes, but remember that Moncada got COVID early in last season. He basically said that he never felt right. And I know maybe it's convenient for somebody to say that. When a player doesn't do well, you might want to have a convenient excuse. But I believe that certainly I have no problem taking that on good faith. I know it's only natural that if somebody who maybe you believed in didn't have a good season, you just want to write it off to how unusual the year was, or if they had COVID or something like that. But I think you had to at least factor that in when you were pricing him in draft season.
Totally. Freddie Freeman also had a bad case too.
Then he won the MVP, right?
Yeah, so I'll believe Moncada's word, but I still think his track record is poor, despite even just the 2020 year. Let's do pitchers. Bold prediction from you, Scott.
Yeah, I'll start at the top of the pile, and then I'll give you a really obscure guy. Not that anybody needs help that Jake DeGrom's good, but I actually think at 100 to 1 he was a really interesting MVP pick. I think he's capable of dominating pitching in a way, because the way a pitcher wins MVP is he's going to need somebody. The season's going to have to flow a certain way where no offensive player separates from the pack, and then the pitcher has statistics that are portable in a way because he's separated himself so much from the other pitchers. And of course, the National League has a